Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SPX Podcast, brought to you by the Steel Pipe Exchange, featuring Matt Manley and Brian DuBose.
We are rolling.
This time, whatever episode this is, you want to talk about some freight?
Yeah, we brought up before about freight, so I think that'd be good to talk about some freight. So we're talking about freight.
Big part of the business.
Yeah, with pipe, we're talking about flatbeds. That is an empty flatbed, a full flatbed when you're talking about pipe. You don't really do it in box trucks. You can. It's not.
I've seen one where it had a retractable box, I guess you would say.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's probably really expensive. I don't know, but typically we're talking about flatbeds.
That guy didn't seem to haul much pipe. He didn't really know what he was doing.
So
goosenecks.
Yeah.
We have customers at our retail locations that they bring a 20-foot trailer. I don't know I guess it's a flatbed, but they have the little rails on the side.
Yeah, just like a utility trailer kind of thing, just a regular old trailer. Sometimes they bring them 20, 16 foot even, and they'll cut the pipe in half or whatever. Basically anything with a flat deck. A lot of people like to put them in cattle trailers, but that's
tough.
Difficult and dangerous. Don't recommend it, but sometimes that's all you got. And we try to help as much as we can at our locations.
I've seen some customers put like rodeo panels on the outside of cattle trailers. That's probably even better than putting them on the inside.
Yeah.
But we have loaded our fair share of customers with the inside of a cattle trailer for some retail stuff like that. Rodeo panels and gates and that kind of thing. Pasture gates would be okay for that, but pipe would be pretty difficult and dangerous. But it's such a big part of the business. I mean, it's a cost factor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the convenience factor. People don't seem to recognize that this isn't Amazon Prime.
Right.
So you're not getting free delivery. You're not probably going to get same day or next day delivery.
Yeah.
If you're picking up, great. If you're moving this stuff any kind of distance, we ship all over lower 48 states. We've shipped overseas before, and not very common, but freight's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's a big part, and it sometimes is expensive, and the further you go, the more likely you are to have problems just because there's more things that can go wrong. But for the purposes of SPX, it's typically full truckloads of pipe. Like we said before, you can get less than the truckloads, but that's usually an individual coming, picking up and hauling. Or a local delivery type of thing. Hot shot thing, something like that. When we talk about truckloads, we talk about freight, you're talking about 18-wheelers, semi-trucks and trailers, flatbeds. Sometimes you get a drop deck, but not typically because it's harder to load. And we've had our fair share of goods and bads on those.
You do a whole episode on a day in the life of a freight broker. I'd love to do that one day because I think that they live a pretty adventurous life from their desk.
Yeah.
But man, the stories that you hear are just insane. But I mean, I don't exactly know where to start. But I mean, today, just like 30 minutes ago, I had our testing facility yard manager out in Odessa call and say that a truck showed up. This was one of our resellers, one of our dealers, who's a pretty big dealer, but it's a new one, and they sent their own 18-wheeler, showed up.
Which is fine.
That's totally fine. I tell everybody that wants to do self-pickup, when you send your own truck to one of our testing facilities, the truck needs to have a headache rack, needs to have pipe stakes, needs to have loading boards, needs to have straps and chains, straps and dunnage. And it didn't show up with the pipe stakes. And sometimes that's okay because you show up to a facility that can provide you with standards or with pipe stakes, but not in this case. They don't have anything out there. So they got to turn that truck away. It's unsafe to load stacks of 2 7/8 pipe with no pipe stakes.
Yeah,
and I don't think you can haul it that way.
Yeah, and I think what's that TV show about oil fields now with
Landman?
Landman. There's an episode in Landman where a guy's standing up on a load of pipe, and he's kicking it and doing all that stuff. There's no pipe stakes. It's unstrapped, or well, I don't remember if it's unstrapped, but there was no pipe stakes. He falls off, and spoiler alert if you hadn't seen the show, but the guy falls off and gets pinned under some pipe and dies.
And that character is no longer with us.
Yeah, character's no longer with us, and that's a real thing that happens to people, and that's the reason that they have these rules. The pipe stakes, if you've ever been on the side of the road picking up pipe that fell off your truck, you'll wish you had them. It is not fun. That pipe is heavy. That's why we load it with forklifts. And that's your best case scenario is it fell off and you're picking it up.
Right.
Best case. Worst case, it fell on you, fell on somebody, fell on equipment.
Equipment.
Something. And that's why the pipe stakes are so important.
Helps for loading, unloading, and when you're hauling, helps for that safe, just that extra barrier for if your chains or straps had some kind of fault.
Yeah.
It keeps them from breaking.
Yeah, I've never driven a big truck. I mean, I've driven the truck. I've never driven it, professionally, but I've never been a truck driver, and I don't know if there's laws that say you have to have the pipe stakes. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there were.
I think there are.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
I know, like when we're sending a load of 8-foot posts, we have to get a truck with extra pipe stakes because I think that you have to have a certain amount of standards or pipe stakes to cover the various joints. So basically, that makes more joint stacks when you have more posts. So you have to have more stakes.
Yeah, and for some context on that, imagine a full truckload full of pipe, all just cut up 8-foot sections. That's that you can get about 4 out of a piece of pipe. So you take the amount of individual sticks times 4, it's a lot more dangerous.
The other thing that's just for driver safety is a headache rack.
Yep.
So if you're hauling a load of pipe and you're going 70 miles an hour down the interstate and you have to slam up on your brakes, that pipe is super heavy and it's all strapped down and hopefully strapped down really well. But when you're going that fast with that much weight, that pipe is going to want to shoot forward.
Yeah, the inertia.
The momentum.
The inertia of that pipe is very strong.
So if you're in that cab in that truck and that pipe does get loose and shoots forward, it's going straight through your truck.
Yeah.
And you're in the truck, so you don't want to be there. So if you need to have a headache rack so that pipe has something to hit that's reinforced and strong, it's not going to go right through. I mean, your brother was driving a gooseneck trailer with some decoil tubing and had a lockup situation where he locked up on his brakes, and even though the pipe was strapped down, it was bundled, it still had that force that propelled it forward. Now, luckily, the gooseneck, the dually trailer or dually truck had a bed on the truck, and so the pipe hit the bed first.
Yeah, the tailgate.
But it was a lot of tailgate, a lot of damage on that thing.
Yeah. It's happened. It's happened. Like you were just saying, it's happened to my family. It's happened to me on a small scale, but it's happened to big trucks. So you can Google it, and there's pictures all over of trucks with pipes sticking out the front of it, and it can really be a very bad situation that can be avoided with a piece of equipment. And that's why the facilities, they'll turn the truck away. They won't load it. As much as we need them to load to make sales, as much as they need to load it to get it out of there, they won't do it if it's not safe. Now, some will, but also, that's up to them. It's up to the driver. It's
risking lives.
It's really
$1,000
not. Yeah, it's really not worth risking the lives. So that's good that with the pipe stakes keeps it coming off the side. The headache rack, which a headache rack is, imagine on the front of the trailer or on the back of the truck, in between the cab and the pipe, it's just a big metal wall basically, and it's not super heavy, but it's there, and all it does is kind of catch that material if it needs to.
It's that extra protection.
Yeah, and the other thing that they have is the dunnage, the boards that it goes under, and that fixes a couple different things. One, it makes it stack nice and easy. You can load it pretty easily on those, and you can unload it pretty easily on those. So that way you're not just sticking your forks into a big middle of something and getting it all crazy. But also it it helps for like if when you get to where it's going to be unloaded and you unstrap it and take the pipe stakes out, or you leave the stakes in, it doesn't when you unstrap it, the pipe doesn't spread out and like press up against your pipe stakes, because even with pipe stakes, sometimes the rails on the trailer where the pipe stakes go down, I've seen it to where it's hit stuff and that entire rail just starts peeling off, and the pipe stakes come down, the material comes down, and it's a very dangerous situation. Luckily, last time that happened, it didn't hurt anybody. It got close to some people, but everybody was far enough away practicing safety to where it didn't happen. But even when you take the precautions, it can still happen.
Right.
And it's like Matt said, and like we teach it and we preach in our companies, that it's not worth your life to be unsafe, because the stuff we deal with pipe wise and everything else is super heavy. It will kill you quick. And if pipe lands on you and you break both your legs and are crippled, you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, I mean, so that's basically, I mean, if you're going to be selling pipe, buying pipe, hauling pipe, you need to know what you need to be prepared with. Any pipe yard, whether they're prepared or not, you need to be prepared.
Yeah.
You got to have the equipment. You got to have the protective gear. It's good for drivers. We always tell drivers to show up with PPE, a safety helmet, safety glasses, safety vest, long pants, and steel toe boots.
Yeah.
You're on a pipe yard with heavy, heavy steel, and sometimes it's stacked way up high. If you're walking and for whatever reason the stack falls, you just want that protection. If you lose a toe, that's not worth it.
Right.
You want to keep all your appendages, and you certainly want to go home at the end of the day and keep your life. Now, on the cost side, obviously, you got to have those things to mitigate the liability, insurance, and all that other stuff. But on just the normal, so let's say you have all those things. You've got all your PPE, you've got your truck is well equipped and everything.
And these are all these safety things. They're standard stuff for trucks to have. Yeah. So it's not like some off the wall stuff to have. It's standard things.
Right. So then, whether you're buying pipe, selling pipe, a big cost factor in moving this stuff is the freight. So if you're thinking, let's say, Midland, Odessa, there's so much pipe moving in and out of that area.
New and used.
New, used, and in between. So our two main facilities that we own are in Hearne and San Antonio, Texas. So if we're going to buy a load of pipe from Midland, Odessa, and bring it to San Antonio, probably right now costs us $950 in freight. Now, that $950 is split up between the freight broker, which we run our own freight, so that's a separate company that we own, gets a chunk of that money, and then another chunk of that money, part of that goes to the driver. And there's usually an average cost that goes into a shipping lane. So right now, Midland, Odessa, there's always flatbeds. I say always. There's usually a lot of flatbeds that need a backhaul. So our freight coordinator tries to get somebody who's needing a backhaul to go to San Antonio. They'll say, well, the average for that lane is $800. Well, our freight coordinator needs to be compensated, so they want to make $150. That's why it's $950 for steel pipe exchange to pay for a load of pipe going to San Antonio. So if we're paying for the pipe, 2 3/8, you get 330 joints on a truck. 2 7/8, you get 230 joints on the truck. Well, if I pay X for 2 3/8, that doesn't mean that it's the same X when it arrives in San Antonio.
Right.
Now what I have to do is do a little bit of calculus here to say, well, I've got 330 joints of pipe on that truck, and I've got to spread $950 across that whole truck. Well, you can spread a lot more for 2 3/8, but 2 7/8, you get 100 joints less, so you have to spread it over.
Right, because your freight cost is the same whether you're shipping one joint
or all
the joints. Mm-hmm. It's the same freight because it's the same mileage, and trucks don't. It's not about weight. It's not about the cargo. In our industry, it's not about the cargo. It's all the same whether they're shipping one or 330.
Right. So that $950, doesn't sound like a ton. I mean, it depends on who you ask. So if you're asking somebody who thinks that this is Amazon Prime and will I get next day or same day delivery for no charge, that's a different conversation. But for somebody who's used to paying thousands of dollars in freight, $9.50, ooh, shoot, send me that load.
Yeah.
But you still need to do that calculus. If you're going to be reselling it, you need to make sure that you've got that cost factored in. If you're doing a project, you need to have that cost factored in so you can fully account for what your cost of that project is. Now, $9.50 for us is not very much. You know, we're like, and when I say not very much, $950 is a lot of money. I'm saying for a load of pipe, $9.50 is on the lower end of what we pay in freight.
Yeah.
If we're sending material to South Dakota, to Montana, we even sent a load of pipe to Massachusetts recently. We've sent pipe to Washington recently.
Oregon, California.
Let's see, we've sent to Florida. Now, that's a long way from Midland, Odessa. So I believe the most we've spent recently on freight is something like $5,400. Now that's a big difference from $9.50.
Yeah.
So you take that same load of 2 3/8 and 2 7/8, and that calculus, spits out a delivered price that's a lot different. So I think it'd be helpful, I guess, if we do an example as fast as we possibly can here.
Yeah, I know that on 2 3/8, 330 at $9.50, it's roughly $3 a joint that it adds to us. Now, if you're doing that 5,200, what does that add to a load of 5,200?
5,200 divided by 330. That adds $15.75 per joint.
Yeah. So you buy. Right? That sounds right. Yeah. You buy a load of pipe from us. Say you pay $45 for a joint of pipe. You paid $45 for that plus the freight. So your delivered cost is going to be around $60 a joint.
So here's how you do the math. If you do 45 for the price of the pipe times 330 joints, you're at $14,850 for that load of pipe just to sit there.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to move that load of pipe, load it on a truck and send it across the country, add $5,400. Now your total cost is $20,250. Divide that same number by 330 joints. Now your delivered cost is $61.36. Now that doesn't factor in your labor and your equipment to unload it. That's just to buy the pipe and to ship it across the country. Now you may say, okay, well, I'm going to hire a guy and pay him $15 an hour. Takes me an extra 2 hours, $30. Okay, add that, spread it over your cost. Now you've got a full accounting of what your delivered price is.
And that's a good way to. I say it's a good way. It is, but you have to do that. There's no if you don't figure your stuff and your costs like that, and that's just business. You're gonna lose money. Like if you say I'm buying it for $45, I'm selling it for $60. I'm making $15 a joint. No, you're not, because
you lost $1 and change.
You just lost $1 because you paid to have it moved, and that's just an exercise you need to get used to if you're in the business. Now, a lot of our customers, they want us to quote them a delivered price of material, which is fine. We're happy to do that. There's no problem with that at all, delivered price. We do all that math for you. Like we'll do the freight quotes and we'll do it and we'll figure it out. We'll tell them, okay, you're going to be this much money delivered to your yard at this date. Right. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, okay, great. That sounds good. Or they'll be like, oh, it's just too expensive. I can get it cheaper over here, which it happens, when freight goes high. It's sometimes cheaper to get it local, and that's fine. There'll be a time when it's not, or freight will come down.
Right.
So that's just an exercise that you have to get used to if you're moving a lot of product.
It's important. A lot of folks get in trouble because they've got a good rapport maybe with their freight broker, and they run a lane consistently, Midland to San Antonio. We run that a dozen times a month. But I always have to ask, what is that lane going for these days? Yeah. Because a natural disaster may happen and it jacks that freight up. We run a lane from Louisiana to Florida quite a bit. But Louisiana to Florida is typically not too bad. But when there's a hurricane forming in the Gulf, or it's already hit, the most recent one where North Carolina and Florida was affected quite a bit, I think it took freight from 1,400 we weren't even able to get it for $1,700. We were getting it for over $2,000 for that lane. And we did it because we had to communicate with the customer that was receiving it.
Yeah.
But we had to communicate that freight was going up. You know, our customers get comfortable, but we have to let them know, you know, I'm not just going to let them get an invoice and they're just so used to paying that invoice, they just pay it. I'm going to tell them, hey, make sure you look at the freight. The freight jumped up from $1,400 to $2,000.
Yeah. And with what's happening right now with California and the fires, that's going to happen in California because there's going to be shipping into not Southern California, which we don't do a lot in Southern California, mostly northern, but in the agriculture. But Southern California, if you're shipping into there, it's going to be a lot more expensive because they're shipping a lot of, you're going to be shipping a lot of building materials and aid and different things like that. The government is going to be contracting things to go there, and the government will pay top dollar because that's the thing with the government is they'll spend money to get it done.
Which they need to.
Which they need to. Yeah, they need to. The people need it, and you know that's good to do, and that's what the government's there for.
Right.
You know, whatever your politics are on how they do it is one thing, but they, you know, that's what they do. We pay our taxes. That's what it's for. But in our industry, that's what's going to bring up the freight in that area, and that's just a naturally how business goes.
It's a supply and demand issue, essentially, is what it is. And the drivers, they need to get compensated. They need to get compensated well. You know, a lot of drivers will go where a natural disaster is to help out, but they're going to get paid for it because they're not usually in that area.
Right.
So you're going to be paying a higher price. But the thing is, we run a ton of flatbeds in Midland, Odessa, talking about backhauls and talking about availability of trucks. So people always ask me, well, what's your cost per mile for freight? Well, that's not how we do it anymore. We used to do it just by the mile, but now it's more so about the lane.
Yeah, and some of your local guys, if you're doing local deliveries, by the mile is the way to go because it's a lot easier to figure, and you can work that out individually with your delivery guy, or if you're delivering, then you can work that out.
If you're doing a truck from Midland to Washington, that driver needs to find a way to get back home. Right. If their home isn't, in fact, in Washington. If it's in Washington, they're going from Midland, they need to find a way back, then that's great. But if they're hauling a truck of pipe for you from Midland up to Seattle, Washington area, they need to find a way to get back to, let's say they live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They need to find a way to get back. Well, flatbeds, you know, they haul things that go on flatbeds. You know, we're here to talk about pipe and, you know, rodeo panels and gates and continuous fence. That's what we're hauling on these flatbeds. That's what many of our customers and potential listeners and viewers are hauling. Washington isn't really known for the oil field. It's not really known for rodeo. It's not really known for farm and ranch equipment. So a flatbed is not necessarily the truck of choice for that lane.
Yeah.
So in order for us to get a driver to take a load of pipe to Washington, we have to pay more because it's going to be more difficult for that driver to then find a truck to take to Tulsa or a load to take to Tulsa.
Yeah.
But it's possible, and they'll do it, but they need more money to do it for that effort, which makes sense. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And that's another thing is like the flatbeds. You think about a flatbed truck and the things you haul on, and pipe is a big one. I mean, around in Texas, around our area, it's big. Pipe moves up and down the roads all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's not true for all the country. You rarely see a pipe truck in some parts of the country, but there's other things that flatbeds will haul, like rock, and they'll haul grass, and they'll haul sod, yeah, then pallets, and you know, machinery and equipment, stuff like that. So a lot of the lanes, not necessarily pipe, but a lot of the lanes they'll be hauling other things. And a good freight broker that's been in the business a while, that knows these things, he'll have kind of a list, or she will have a list either in their mind, or they'll have it wrote down or something, or whatever it's going to be, that says, you know, I know that this stuff ships out of this part of the country, this ships out of this part of the country, so they'll already know what to do, and they can, you know, and they could probably look on the load boards or whatever and find that information out. But you know, it just goes into the entire economy of shipping.
Right. And it's more important for what we do because we really try to get the best freight possible.
Yeah.
So we really need to know those things. So like for instance, our freight coordinator, Chris, who's a really great guy, we were shipping some material up to South Dakota and it was very cold. And
Yeah.
so I think it was probably around the holidays as well.
Yeah, that's another good point.
The driver doesn't naturally want to go there. He's like, well, I want to stay close to home. It's cold up there. I don't have my cold weather gear.
Yeah.
And I'm hauling pipe from Midland, Odessa up there. You know, what's in it for me? My freight broker, he jokingly told me that he was looking up reasons for him to go visit the South Dakota. You know, it's great for Christmas time. You get to look at some lights, snowball fights, different things. He was jokingly pitching that stuff. But to your point, a good freight broker will help convince drivers to take it. Well, it's going to be easier for you to grab this and come back, and you'll make it back in time for the holidays, which is really important for us because, you know, we own our own freight brokerage. So we go out and find the drivers. Now, we don't own the trucks. We don't employ the drivers. What we do is obviously we're shippers. You know, we ship loads of pipe. But we have freight coordinators that find a driver, match them with a load and a destination. So again, using Midland, Odessa or any number of our locations, let's say they're going to go to the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. Well, if they're going to drop off at a farm, you know, a guy's going to build a fence. So he's bought a load of pipe, maybe sucker rod, whatever it is, to build his fence. And there's nothing within 200 miles, even though the mileage, you're like, wow, that's a lot per mile. Well, the thing is he's got 200 miles to drive before he can find a load that he can then take to his next location.
Yeah, so he's got to take our load, deliver it, and then deadhead 200 miles out of the way to go find another load. Now, deadhead, if you don't know, is basically driving without a load.
Empty.
You know, driving empty, you're not getting paid for that. Yeah, and then if you look at the price per mile and you factor in an extra 200 miles, usually it'll make more sense. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of extra on there too, just depending on the driver and what it is. But something interesting you brought up was the cold weather. Now, a lot of southern guys don't like to go up to where it's super cold just because we're not used to it. It hurts. It hurts us down here. But that's why, in Texas, when we get ice and snow, we'll shut our stuff down, and then the northern guys laugh at us. But you know, that's just how we are down here.
We laugh at them when it gets 90 degrees.
Right, exactly. It's all in good fun. But there'll be a lot of things to where they'll get up there, and there'll be a mandatory that you'll have to put chains on your tires.
Right.
If we have a driver that's in the South that typically stays in the South, he may not have chains. He doesn't know how to put chains on, or he doesn't know how to drive with chains because it's different. You don't know how to drive on icy roads. They made an entire TV show, Ice Road Truckers, because it's so different.
And that's why it pays so well.
Yeah, and it pays a lot more. And that's when we were looking at sending a load up, I don't remember exactly where, but it was in the northern part of the country, up closer to Canada. We were looking at shipping a load up there, but they were getting a big winter storm. So the price of freight almost doubled because of the inherent risk and the difficulty getting up there. And we decided, us and the customer, everybody decided to wait a while, a week or whatever, till it thawed out, and then the freight went back down. But there are guys that are willing to do that load. If it was something that you really needed right then, it had to be then. There are guys that'll do it, but you're going to pay.
Yeah.
Same as on holidays. Like if you get somebody to deliver something on Christmas, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. They'll do it. Not everybody, but there's a lot of guys that'll do it, but you're going to pay for it.
And basically the way it works is, like we originally said, we look at, or our freight coordinator looks at an average for that lane.
Yeah.
Now, the average is based on normal conditions, not the holidays, normal average conditions.
Yeah, anomalies are going to change it.
So basically the way that it works is a freight broker will post a load open on a load board to whoever is available to take it. Usually the freight broker says, you need to have a headache rack, pipe stakes, these things. Those are knockout questions, pre-qualifications. But then they'll say, okay, $1,400. And they'll wait for takers. If they don't get any calls, then their next step is to say $1,450, $1,475.
Yeah.
And just knock it up and keep it going. Usually what they do, freight brokers will quote a customer, a shipper. They'll say, I can do it for $1,400. Or let's say they told the customer $1,700, but they're posting it on the load board for $1,400 to just continue with those numbers. So again, they know that they're going to get paid $1,700. They're going to make $300. Usually freight brokers like to make more than this. This is just an example that I'm pulling out of a hat. But they told the customer for $1,700. Now I'm all confused on my numbers. Told the customer $1,700. They're posting on the load board $1,400.
Yeah.
So they know that they've got $300 to play with. Well, if no one is taking it all the way up to $1,700,
yeah,
that's a problem where then the freight broker doesn't want to lose money.
Right.
Usually doesn't want to break even either.
Yeah.
They tell the customer, hey, I've got to go up on this rate.
Yep.
So that's what we deal with the freight coordinators and the freight brokers is, okay, we're not getting any bites on this load right now. Well, if you wait a week, you might get some bites. But if you don't, you're just going to have to eat it and go up on your freight.
Yeah.
Customers don't like that because they were told they can do it for $1,700. But if you want to get it moved, you got to do what you got to do.
And we take that into consideration anytime we're doing quotes for people, and we let them know that this is what we're thinking about. And if we have to go up on them, then we sometimes we'll call customers and we'll talk about it. Sometimes the customers will do it. There's been times to where it's been such a problem or we've had issues or whatever the circumstances are where we have lost money on it just to make the customer happy. And that happens sometimes. It's the cost of doing business. We don't like it. We can't do it very often because then we'd be out of business.
Right.
But there are options to do it, but there are some rules.
An example of like when we do it is we sold a load of pipe. We got paid for it. We had a reasonable freight quote that we were given by our freight coordinator. Again, separate company. We own it, but it's a separate company. So the freight brokerage is making money.
Yeah, we own it. We don't run it.
We don't run it. Our freight coordinator runs it. But we know what we stand to make on it. So if again $1,700 is, and we're hoping to make $300. Well, $1,700 and we're bidding, can't get anything. Now we're at $1,700 and we've got nobody. We're break even. We'll do that. That's fine. But now let's say at $1,700 we've got nobody. $1,800, $1,900, $2,000. Now it's starting to look like we're going to be losing money to get this load moved. Well, because we're the Steel Pipe Exchange and because we own the freight brokerage, we're okay with that. We're making money on the pipe. We're making the customer happy. That's all well and good. Now, a situation where we have to be a little bit more tight, would you say, would be if the customer really beat us up on price.
Yeah.
I've got to have it for this. I've got to have it delivered for that. This. That's fine. We work with a lot of customers. We love all of our customers, but we have some that they just every purchase they make, they're beating us up on the price of the material, on the shipping, everything. Well, so come time to pay for the material, we sent the invoice, they've purchased it, they've paid for the material and the shipping, and now all of a sudden an anomalous event happens. It's holidays, they took too long to send the wire, so now we're in the holiday rush, or there's been a natural disaster, or whatever it is, and we're not getting any bids on the price that we agreed on. We can there's no more room for us to eat it. So now we have to go to the customer and say, well, we can give you your money back.
Yeah.
Or you can pay more. Usually we'll go ahead and pay more, but sometimes we have to give the money back.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we want to serve all the customers, but if we can't serve the customer, if we just can't do it and the customer's unhappy with it and we have to give money back, we don't like doing it for two reasons. One, I want to make a sale. And two, I don't like to have a customer have a bad experience.
Right.
But at least they can't say we were dishonest. So, there's some silver lining there. But as far as freight goes, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. You can get into the minutia about, like the costs and how much it goes and the pros and cons between having our own freight company, having our own trucks, and all these things. There's pros and cons and all that stuff. And starting a freight company it's not easy. It is difficult. There's a lot of things that you don't know about, and I'd love to do a whole deep dive into that with we probably will get with our freight company and have people that know go through it, and it'd be really good information. That
Starting it, running it, the steps, all that good stuff.
That way, people.
The thing about having our own freight company, and people will say, "Oh, you're making more money." Well, yes, but we get the best freight rates of anyone that we know of. I mean, we don't know anybody. Every now and then we'll have somebody who's like, "Well, I'm going to send my own truck because they own their own freight company."
Right.
So they're breaking even on the shipping.
Yeah.
To save, basically just to create a backhaul or whatever.
Yeah.
That's great, and I applaud the folks that do that, and we sell to a bunch of people. Now, we started our freight company because we were selling so much material that we're passing on this cost to the customer, and we've got no control over it.
Yeah.
Well, when we control it, we can determine how much we're going to make or lose on the pipe and on the shipping.
Yeah.
So if I make money on pipe, then I'm willing to lose money on shipping.
If we have to.
If we have to. Of course, I want to make money as much as I can because it pays for the times that we can't. Yep. It's all about mitigating risk, mitigating your costs. But 9 times out of 10, I mean, you can look up different websites, hauling rate, calculators, and different things, and put in the same lane that we quoted you. You're going to get more expensive from people that they're trying to make their money because they're only concerned about making money on the freight.
Yeah.
We're concerned about making money on the pipe, on the material, and on the freight.
Yeah.
So in some instances, if we've got a customer that we're really trying to help out, we're trying to be very competitive on the material, well, I'll break even on the material just so I can sell the freight.
If we have to. Yeah.
If we have to. And then on the flip side, I'll break even on the freight just to make money on the material if we have to.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd love to be competitive on both and make money at both, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, we typically do make it a little bit on both, and that also helps us keep the cost down for our customers, because if I'm making money on both of them, then I can be more competitive on both of them. That's why our freight rates are typically almost always a better freight rate than you can get from somebody else. But
only thing we've seen is if you've got your own trucks.
Yeah, if you got your own trucks and you're used to that, and you've already got all your licenses and all your fees and all that stuff's all paid and all that stuff, you've already done all those costs, then you're going to be able to pick it up cheaper than I can ship it to you. And that's fine. That's why we allow that to happen.
Just show up with your pipe stakes and
your pipe stakes and your stuff, because those aren't our rules. Those are the yard.
Yeah.
The yard
OSHA
rules.
and everybody else comes up with those standards.
Yeah, but
they're good standards. Like, I don't want anyone dying for a load of pipe.
Yeah, no one should die for a load of pipe. That's a good rule to live by. So, and with that, I think that's about all we can go into on freight right now. Well, like I said, we'll do a deep dive on that at some point. But just a little bit of how it works and why it works, and safety and what you need and why you need it, and economics and all that good stuff. And it's not worth dying for some pipe.
Rules to live by.